Welcome once again to our Bible Club. My name is Mama Kisumu and I love the Lord with all of my heart. I have not changed him for anything. And I know that he loves you. I don't know how you've been the whole week, but I know one thing for sure, that the Lord has been good to me, and I know he has been good to you because you are watching this program. Our program's title today is on deciding to obey God. Are you obedient? Do you obey your mom, your papa, your elders? Do you obey when you're told what to do that is right? Do you do it right? I know that some of us, we are not very obedient when you're told to do something. And sometimes you may be asked to do something by your parent and you're asking, why, when, how? That's not what it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be able to just do what you're being told to do. Because I am sure your parent cannot tell you to do something that is not good. Right? So, I want us to read. I hope you have your Bible, your pen, and your notebook. Because I want us to read from our Bible about the story for today. So open with me in your Bible, in the book of 2 Kings. It's in the Old Testament. I want us to go to chapter 5, and we will start from verse 1 up to 19. That is where I want to get to today. And then we can probably watch a short video after this, so that you can get exactly the story as it goes. And this story of today is about a man called Naaman. Naaman was a general in the army of Syria. And Naaman was a great general. And Naaman was loved by the king of Syria because he was a great fighter. Are you great in what you do? I hope you are the one who is sent most of the time. Do you know the person who mommy keeps calling all the time? John, kuja nilete makaa. John, leta hiyo maji kwa hapo nje. John. If you do not complain all the time, you will find that mommy calls you all the time. So if you are the person that mommy calls all the time, just know, hata saa zile anapika hiyo chapati yake, utasikia tu, John, hebu kuja uonje ya kwanza tujue kama ni tamu. Because you are the one who goes without what? Without complaining. And so, Naaman was a general in the kingdom of Syria. And he was loved by the king because he was active, he was strong, and he was the person who you could send chap like this, and he goes. But you know what? I want us to see the story of Naaman and what happened to him. We shall read our story now. Naaman was commander of the army of the king of Aram. He was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded, because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. He was a valiant soldier. But do you know what? But he had leprosy. Now, in bands from Aram had gone out and taken captive a young girl from Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, if only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy. Naaman went to his master and told him what the girl from Israel had said. You know what? Naaman had captured, they had gone to Israel, and they had fought there, and they had his army had burnt farms, they had stolen all the grain, they had destroyed homes, and they killed people, and they took others captive to go and become slaves. And there was this a girl who is about 12 years old who was captured and she was given to Naaman's wife to become a slave for the wife. But you know, this girl, she loved the Lord. And she did all she could to make sure that Naaman's wife was a happy woman. And Naaman's wife was always happy with her. And everywhere she went, she took the girl. Everything she wanted, the girl was there to assist her. Are you the person that your parent takes and assists all the time, calls upon to assist them? Are you the same person whom, when mommy is feeling unwell or when she's sick in bed, you can be able to go all the time? Mommy, how are you feeling today? Mommy, can I bring some water? Have you eaten? Mommy, wake up. Mommy, do. Mommy, do. Are you that type of a person? Because the Lord sees your deeds and he honors them. But if you are the type when something is happening in the home and you don't really care about what is going on, tell me, how do you expect to be blessed? So you see, this little girl knew her God, and she knew about the prophet back home where she came from, because she had heard him talking about God. She had heard him telling people about God, and she knew about God. That is why she was able to tell Naaman, why can't you go and see this prophet of ours? He can cure you, because she had seen people being healed through that prophet. She did not keep bitterness within her, that this man, he captured me, so I'm not going to tell him about the prophet, let him die. No. And that is why you are supposed to love your enemies. Love them and help them when they come to you. Do you remember Joseph and his brothers? The same thing, huh? When he was in trouble, they were happy and they were clapping. But the day he became the governor in Egypt, in charge of the food, imagine when the brothers came. What do you think that they felt? Supposing he had said, mutaona, mulinitupa kwa shimo, nitawatupa kwa masimba. Imagine if he had done that. So this girl, she told Naaman about how he can get cured of his leprosy. And the good thing about Naaman, he listened. Let's go on. Naaman went to his master. That is from verse 4. Naaman went to his master and told him what the girl from Israel had said. By all means go, the king of Aram said. I will send a letter to the king of Israel. So Naaman left, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. The letter that he took to the king read, with this letter I am sending my servant Naaman to you, so that you may cure him of his leprosy. As soon as the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his robes and said, my God, can I kill and bring back to life? Why does this fellow send someone to me to be cured of his leprosy? See how he's trying to pick a quarrel with me. The good thing is that Naaman went. He went to the king of Israel. And do you see what he has done? He carried gifts. When you are going to the house of the Lord for something good that you want the Lord to do to you, make sure that you carry a gift. Don't go empty-handed. Even I am very sure your parents, when they are going home, mukienda mashamba, kuona kina shosho, they carry some sugar, they carry some salt, they carry some, something good for the parents back home. Learn to carry something good to when you're visiting somebody, when you're visiting the house of God, when you're visiting the man of God, when you're visiting a sick person. Don't just go there natembea kihole, like, it is your gift. Remember, a gift sometimes, it works the miracle. Okay. So the king was very angry because he was like, now ninatumiwa huyu nimfanyie nini? Am I the one who heals people? Kwanza ni leprosy. Leprosy is a disease that does not get cured. It has no cure. It had no cure. And they were sending him there. He was very angry. He was even scared. He was like, is he looking for a fight? This man, see, the other day they came here, they fought us and they took away our people. Now again he wants us to fight. He is looking for a fight. How am I supposed to heal this man? Oh, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor now. Verse 8. When Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his robes, he sent him a message. Why have you torn your robes? Have the man come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel. So Naaman went with his horses and chariots and stopped at the door of Elisha's house. I can imagine the way Naaman was passing through the streets. You know, he had a very beautiful horse and a very beautiful chariot. And I can imagine the way when the king told him, okay, you go to Elisha's house because he has sent for you. He must have been riding with a lot of majesty on that horse. And everybody was like, wow, wow. Have you ever seen when a new matatu or a new bus passes by your estate that has never passed before? Can you imagine the way people, everybody comes, hey, come and see, ebu kujeni muone, maze, yo mat ni poa, maze, ebu cheki tu. You want to see. Everybody had come to see who Naaman was, and the horse and the chariot and the people that he had and the gifts that were being carried. Whoa! It was such a beautiful sight for the people to see. And then he went to who? Elisha's house. Let us see what happened. Let's go back to verse 10. So Naaman went with his horses and chariots and stopped at the door of Elisha's house. That is verse 9. And 10 goes, Elisha sent a messenger to say to him, go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed. Aha. Have you heard what he has said? Go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed. Elisha did not come out. He sent a servant. Imagine this noble man who is looking so great, and although he has leprosy, and everybody is just wowing at his horses and chariots, and then all of a sudden, Elisha is not coming out. He is sending the servant. Anatuma huyo mtu wake wochi, endo mwambie aende akajisugue mara 7. Mtoni. Kwanza mtoni, in the river. How many of us know how to swim river? River ni ilu no swim. You're not very sure whether it is swimming or it's walking in the water. And you can imagine the river is dirty. Maji ya matope, alafu naambiwa endo ukajiingize hapo ndani. I can imagine the way he must have felt. Oh yes, I know what he felt, because we are going to see it. In verse 11, but Naaman went away angry and said, I thought that he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord, his God, hand over the spot and cure me of my leprosy. Are not Abana and Papha, the rivers of Damascus, better than any of the waters of Israel? Couldn't I wash in them, be cleansed? So he turned and went off in a range. Akakasirika. Ukiambiwa ufanye kitu nyumbani alafu unakasirika. Unakasirikanga kwa nini? Because you don't want to do it, yeah? You don't want to be obedient. Yes? Remember those days in school? Your teacher tells you to do something, and then because you don't want to do it, you decide unaitikia tu And then unaenda una complain na haufanyi. And then more punishment follows you, and another one and another one. And some of you were expelled from school. And let me tell you something. Obedience is better than sacrifice at any time. Okay? So what happened to this guy? He decided, the rivers in our homeland, they are very, very clean. Why is he telling me to go to River Jordan, that dirty river? Imagine what he was thinking. Instead of obeying what he was told, he is now complaining and saying why his rivers, wherever he is, are better than the river that he was being told to go and wash. And he was like, I can imagine, he said, hata sitaenda, ninaenda home, hebu tuendeni. I can imagine what he did. But you know what? He had servants with him. You remember the people who were carrying the presents for him? They were with him. So they decided. Naaman's servants, verse 13, Naaman's servants went to him and said, my father, if the prophet had told you to do something great, some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then when he tells you to wash and be cleansed? So he went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, as the man of God had told him, and his flesh was restored and became clean like that of a young boy. Imagine. Ilichukua another of his servants to go and plead with him. He takes you another child who you are playing outside there with to tell you, please, skiza tu venye mama yako anakuambia. I am sure your mother does not mean ubaya kwako. No, saa ingine umechapwa hata na unatoka nje kwa sababu ya kitu uliambiwa ufanye na hukufanya. Na bado unangojewa ufanye. Endo washe jiko hukuwasha. Umewekwa, umetoka pale nje. Hado yo madhi hata simpendi. And then your friend tells you, but you know what? It's better. Why don't you just twende tu hata wacha nitakusaidia tu washe jiko. And then you go and do that. You see? But this guy, what did he decide? He does not want. Amekasirika. Nasiendi, nasifanyi, nasiogi. But do you know what? The servant told him, why don't you? Why don't you just do it? And I can imagine when he went down to that Jordan, akaenda, akavua nguo zake, akaingia pale. Chubu, the first time, akatoka. Chubu the second time. Unaona hata hii kitu ishi, anaambia ingia tena. Chubu 4, 5, 6, akatoka amejam. Siogi tena. Ona hii kitu aishi, mimi naenda. And then the servants, they decide, wewe, si uliambiwa mara 7, sasa wewe unatoka mara ya 6, ona hata ujanini. And I can imagine this servant, he was like this man. Hey, me, I want him to be well. But because he doesn't see what he's doing, I can imagine what he would have done if he was a Kenyan. Walienda wakamuinua, 1, wakamurusha tu ndani, chwa! Wakamwambia utaoga, ukitaka na usitake. Ingia, and they threw him inside there. And I can imagine when he got out and he looked at himself and he found that he was cleansed, the way he was happy. He was so happy. Oh my, mazeni kama ya kabebi. Ushaona nyinyi wenye mko na tutoi? Kale kabebi kenyu, kabebi brother, baby sister. Ako kabebi kangozi kanakaanga aje. Smooth. Imagine hiyo ndio ngozi huyu jamaa alipewa na God. You see the way God can give you good things when you obey? When you obey, God can do great things for you. He can take you back 10 years. He is God. He made sure that his skin was cleansed and he was healed, and it was like of a baby. Mwenye anapako ile Vaseline ya baby, unanuka baby the whole day. That is what happened to him. Oh, this man was happy. Then Naaman and all his attendants went back to the man of God. He stood before him and said, now I know there is no God in all the world except in Israel. Please accept now the gift from your servant. But the prophet answered, as surely as God lives, whom I serve, I will not accept a thing. And even though Naaman urged him, he refused. If you will not, please, said Naaman, please let me, your servant, be given as much earth as a pair of mules can carry. For your servant will never again make burnt offering and sacrifices to any other god but the Lord. But may the Lord forgive your servant for this one thing. When my master enters the temples of Rimmon to bow down, and he is leaning on my arm, and I bow there also. When I bow down to the temple of Rimmon, may the Lord forgive your servant for this. Imagine. Alienda akamwambia basi chukua hii chapa, chukua hizi manguo. Akamwambia no, I cannot take. Do you know why? Because glory goes to God, not to man. It is not man who heals you. It is God who heals you. God is the one who healed Naaman, not Elisha. And that is why Elisha did not want any payment. If Naaman knew, he would have taken these gifts to the temple. Aende ashukuru Mungu huko. But not to Elisha. Elisha refused to take. Sometimes when you do a good deed, I am not going to tell you, take everything that you are given. Sometimes it's just good to do a good deed for someone and let them be. Umeenda umesaidia mshosho kucross barabara pale, na tuvitu twake amecross ameenda. Si unasimama hapa akupatie ndizi ati kwa sababu ulimsaidia. Hapana. Wewe ulifanya kazi mzuri ya kumshika mkono na kumfanya nini? Kumvukisha. When you do something good to somebody, does not mean they have to pay you all the time. There is what you can be given out of, I just want to say thank you. But there is what you can be given of as a bribe. Now, this one looks more of a bribe than, can you bribe God? No. But you can thank God. And that is why I said, when you go to the house of the Lord, don't go empty-handed. But when you go to the man of God, si ati akienda pale kuombea alafu unampatia pesa. Unampatia pesa kwa nini? Si yeye amefanya what has the good that has the miracle that has happened to you happen. God is the one that has done the miracle for you through the man of God. So you can only tell the man of God, I am really happy and grateful. I just want you to have soda. Lakini si ati unamlipa kwa kazi ambayo amefanya nini? Amefanya. Malipo ni ya nani? Ni ya Mungu. So Naaman, imagine, akaenda pale, akamwambia chukua, akakataa. Akamwambia basi nipe tu mchanga. Nibebe niende huko kwetu, niende nikatengeneze nini? I make an altar for the Lord. Because he knew huko kwao, they worship idols. And that is why you hear him saying here, that hata akiingia pale na ule, mfalme wake wakienda kupigia magoti, au mamiungu wao, Mungu amsamehe kwa maana yeye anajua si ati anataka kumpigia magoti. Okay? So, finally what did Elisha tell him? Go in peace. Go in peace. Let me tell you, children of God, obedience is better than sacrifice any time. When you are told to do something by God, don't dilly-dally on, do I do it, do I not, do I not. Why? Because God, when he tells you go, go. When he tells you don't go, don't go. When he tells you stop, stop. When he tells you move, move. When he tells you it is time to go, then you have to obey. When he asks you to do something, obey. When your parent tells you something, obey. Don't think twice. Okay? When your pastor sends you something, obey. As long as all the things that they are telling you are things that are not going to... Sisemi ati ukiambiwa endo uibe kuku ya jirani utuletee tupike sapa leo. Hapana, hiyo si mzuri. But when you are told, go buy sugar, go. And sometimes, unaweza ambiwa aje, mzazi anaweza ona hatari inakuja. Maybe kuna nyoka nyuma yako. Alafu akwambie nini? Ebu lala, Just sleep, lie down. Na wewe unauliza kwa nini? Let me tell you, utaumwa kongo huku nyuma ya kichwa na utajua ni kwa sababu alitaka you just obey. So just obey, okay? I'm going to send you a short movie like this, and after you have watched the movie, then we can get back to our memory verse. So I hope you will enjoy the short movie as I prepare myself to bring the memory verse. God bless you.
In the Old Testament of the Bible, we read the story of Naaman, the commander-in-chief of the army of Syria. Naaman was highly respected by his fellow men, and he was known by everyone to be a personal friend of the king. If being rich and having an important job had been all that was necessary to guarantee happiness, Naaman's home would have been a wonderful place to live. But unfortunately, Naaman's home was a place of sorrow. Naaman had leprosy, a dreaded sickness for which there was no cure. Naaman's wife and the other members of his family were very sad in knowing that day by day, Naaman was slowly dying. Even the servants felt sorry for Naaman and his wife, and one of the servants in particular wondered if she might not speak to them about their sorrow, if she might not tell them about the true and the living God, and about the prophet of God that lived in the land of her childhood. The servant girl felt sure that Naaman, if he would go to the place of the prophet, could be cured of his leprosy. So one day she gathered up her courage and told her mistress about the prophet who lived in Israel, and what she felt could be done about this sorrow in their home. Naaman's wife had never heard of God. And yet as she sat there and listened to the servant girl tell of the wonderful things that God could do, new hope came into her heart. And Naaman's wife ran to tell her husband of this wonderful thing that she had heard. And as she ran toward him, Naaman watched her with puzzled eyes. What could have happened in their home of sorrow to make his wife so happy? And when Naaman heard what the servant girl had said, he could hardly believe his ears. A God that could cure leprosy? Could such a thing be true? Surely the servant girl would never lie to them about such a thing. So Naaman agreed with his wife that he would have to go and try to find the prophet. But where? Where would he find such a man? Perhaps the king would know. The king of Syria had never heard of a man called the prophet. But the king felt sure that the ruler of Israel would know, so he gave Naaman a letter of introduction for the captain of the Syrian army. And not only that, the king saw to it personally that a royal gift was prepared for whomever it might be that could cure Naaman of his dreaded disease. The king did everything humanly possible to show Naaman how much he thought of him, to indicate to his commander-in-chief that his only wishes were for his speedy recovery. It was a long journey, but finally Naaman arrived at the palace of King Jehoram, the ruler of the land of Israel. And before long, Naaman was standing before the king. An important person like the captain of the Syrian army wasn't someone to keep waiting. The king opened the letter of introduction and started to read. Now when this is come unto thee, behold, I have herewith sent Naaman my servant to thee, that thou mayest recover him of his leprosy. Leprosy? Why, the king could hardly believe his eyes. The ruler of Israel was suddenly very much afraid. His hands started to shake, and yet he knew what a mistake it would be to let these strangers see how upset he was. So the king asked for time to consult with his advisors on this matter of great importance. But the moment the strangers had left the throne room, the king tore his clothes to show how upset he was. And he wailed and he moaned and he cried out, "Am I God? Can I cure a man of his leprosy?" "I know," the king said. "The Syrians are trying to start a quarrel. That's the meaning of this." The wise men of the kingdom studied the problem and tried their very best to find the answer. But because the letter had failed to mention the prophet, And because the king and his men were not right where God was concerned, their problem was without an answer. What were they going to do? One thing they knew: Naaman was to be shown every courtesy while he was there. He was to be given the best of everything. But all of this delay puzzled Naaman. Why should the king have to consult with his advisors? The king was pondering the same problem when, lo and behold, a servant came to the king with a message concerning Naaman. Elisha, the prophet, had heard about Naaman's visit to the king, and the message was a request that Naaman be sent to him so the Syrians would know there was a true and a living God. The king, needless to say, was very happy to be relieved of his problem. Naaman was to be shown to the place of the prophet at once. And as the caravan left the royal palace, Naaman became more and more excited about being healed, about being well again. But when they arrived, they found themselves standing in front of a place such as a poor person would live in, and that bothered Naaman. He was also bothered by the fact that no one was outside to meet him. After all, he was the captain of the Syrian army. 2 of his men rode forward and shouted for someone to come out and meet their leader. But inside the house, an old man continued talking to his servant. Elisha was telling his servant what was to be said to Naaman. And when he had finished, the servant went out to tell Naaman if he would go to a certain river, the river Jordan, and wash himself 7 times, he would be completely healed of his leprosy. A river? Go wash in a river? These people were making fun of him. And besides, were not the rivers of Damascus more beautiful than the dirty, muddy Jordan? They couldn't do this to the captain of the Syrian army. He ordered his men to leave at once. But some of the men that were with Naaman tried to reason with him about it. They reminded their leader that had he been told to do a difficult thing, he undoubtedly would have tried to do it. Why not do as the servant had said? And Naaman knew in his heart that his men were right. If he was going to be helped by God, he must be willing to believe and obey. So Naaman and his men made their way to the river Jordan. But even as he waded into the water, Naaman was probably thinking, why is it all so easy? It might be just a foolish waste of time. But at least his servants would have to say that he had done as he was told. 6 times Naaman went down into the water, and his body remained the same. And when Naaman went down for the 7th time, the men on the bank moved forward. Was it possible for their captain to be healed? Was there a God that could do such a thing? And when Naaman came up out of the water, his shouts of praise gave them their answer.
My leprosy, it's gone!
Oh, what a wonderful time it was. Naaman lifted up his head and sang for joy. In spite of the weakness of his faith, God had healed his body. It was a humble group of men that returned to the small house where Elisha was. They told Elisha of the wonderful thing that had happened, and they tried to give the old man the many gifts they had brought. But Elisha didn't want their gifts. He didn't want their gold. Elisha was happy for the new man that he found in Naaman. A wonderful miracle had taken place. Naaman had been cured of his leprosy through simple faith and obedience to the will of God. In the Holy Bible, we find that leprosy is symbolic of sin, and the story of Naaman's faith and obedience is a guide to our own salvation. In the 3rd chapter of Romans, we read of the leprosy of our souls. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And because of this, man faces spiritual death. For God hath said, the soul that sinneth, it shall die. Naaman's recovery was a miracle of God's goodness and love. But the miracle that is ours is even greater. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the movie about Naaman. Now, I have my memory verse with me here today. This is the river, Jordan, where Naaman was told to go and dip himself. And this is the road on which he was traveling to Israel and from Israel back to Syria. And my memory verse today, as you can see, it is here, Proverbs 3:7. Proverbs 3:7. It says, "Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil." Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. What does this mean? By do not be wise in your own, do not be wise in your own eyes. Yaani usitumie tu macho yako kufikiria nitafanya kitu fulani. Your eyes can lie to you. Your mind can lie to you. All right? But it says, fear the Lord and shun evil. When you fear God, you'll be able to obey, even without asking. When you fear God, you will be able to not do what is not right, because you fear God. Fearing God is the best thing that you can ever do. And when I talk about fearing God, I am not saying ukisikia God ndio huyo una hepa unaingia chini ya kitanda. Hapana. What I mean is respect him, love him, honor him, do what he says. When you do what he says, I'm telling you, you'll be very, very far away from doing what is evil. I hope you have enjoyed today's program. And I hope you'll be able to tell somebody else the story of Naaman. And as you speak about the story of Naaman, remember to be obedient, because obedience is always better than sacrifice. Do not be wise on your own eyes, but fear God and shun evil. Proverbs 3:7. God bless you, children. Be obedient all this week. Be obedient always. And I know that the Lord loves you and he'll continue blessing you. Goodbye.
We will go, we will be your